Welcome to the Story a Day podcast. This is Julie Duffy, encouraging you to be a writer today, not someday. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. It's Julie here from the Story a Day podcast. And this week I invited onto the podcast my friend Nancy Fields to talk about web sites and blogs and getting yourself up and running with a presence online. And Nancy is a graphic designer and helps people, independent people like us, do just this. So she's here to answer all kinds of questions that you might have been scared to ask because maybe they seemed too beginnerish or maybe they seemed too complicated. But Nancy has all the answers. So I'm just going to dive right into the interview that we recorded previously here. And I encourage you to check out her website at fieldsgraphicdesign.com to find out more. Welcome, Nancy. Nancy Fields is a graphic designer, web designer, calligrapher, and botanical illustrator. She feels truly blessed to have grown up with an aunt who was blind because that experience encouraged her to describe what she saw in greater detail, which is something we can all appreciate, and to appreciate the gift of sight. So you can see her portfolio of work at fieldsgraphicdesign.com. and read her creativity journey story in an upcoming book, which is Soulful Leadership, A Spiritual Path to Health, Wealth and Love by Mark Porteous. Nancy.
Thank you. So nice to be here.
So Nancy and I met in another group, and one of the things that she does is she helps people to set up websites, and it's, it can be authors or consultants or entrepreneurs or people who are generally like us, sort of one-man bands. I watched Nancy talk about a course where she was helping people go through just the very sort of simple, here's what you need, here's a way to do it. It's not intimidating. It doesn't have to be complicated. And I thought, ooh, that's really appealing. First of all, I'm going to ask you, why should we have websites instead of just relying on Medium and Facebook and Twitter and all those places where we can be visible online?
I think the big reason is that your website is yours. Every other platform, it is owned by somebody else. And also, if people are looking for you online, they're going to type in your name. And the best name that you could possibly have for your business and as an author is your name. And then on that, you would then put your books. It's a great way for people to find you. And also people nowadays, if you don't have a website, they don't think that you're real. So it gives you credibility.
I think it might be useful to start with what pages you would like to see on an author website.
Well, it's called the bare minimum website, which is, you know what? I think that's all anybody even really wants to deal with these days. People want to read an about page. They've done studies, these eye tracking studies. People will skim every page on your website, but they will read the about page from top to bottom because we're curious. So you need a home page. What to put on the home page? You think about, your home page is like a billboard. So if you're going down the highway, what is it you're going to be telling somebody that they can see when they're driving 65 miles an hour or more? So think of your homepage as your billboard. It's like, hi, I'm a writer. This is what I write about, or, whatever it is that you want to attract people's attention to. And I put definitely your about page copy. Your about page, it's really, think of People magazine. People want to know about you. People want to know probably why you started writing, why you write what you write. It's really more, this is not the formal bio that you'd have on your media page for a publicist. This is about, connecting and being really human and being real and having people say, oh, gee, I do that too, or I've always wanted to do that, or, I can understand where she's coming from or he's coming from. People want to know about you, and especially if you're a writer, they'd be interested in, well, in fact, I do love your site, Julie, because you do, you share things about yourself. You're knitting. I remember just seeing that fabulous sweater that you made. It's like, oh, she's a knitter. Isn't that interesting? So anything like that, people love that stuff. If you want to put on something about your cats or, your animals, something fun
people
to
like
share.
Pictures of writers' desks, oddly enough.
People love behind the scenes. Oh my heavens. Anything you can any tidbit that you feel comfortable sharing. So that's what your about page is about. You need an about page and you need a contact page. And for an author, kind of the cherry on top is a media page. A media page is if somebody is going to interview you and they want to talk about you, you get to share what you want them to say about you. So you would have a photo of yourself because they often want a photo, and then they'll have some information about you so that they could introduce you. So for example, if you were going to be on a podcast or like today's show, Julie said, "Oh, Nancy, do you have a bio?" It's like, "Oh, well, I need a media page too, I guess." So I typed up a little bio, and meanwhile, that would have already been on my page, so that someone, if they wanted your information, you're giving them permission to use it so that they can talk about you. There was one media page that I saw recently that I liked a lot, and it was a very published author, has written a few books, and she just had one image, but it was a large image, 2,500 pixels by 2,500 pixels, and that then was large enough that a media person could take that picture and use it for print, and they could also take it and resize it and put it on a website. So I thought, gee, that's really, that's great and clever. And also it was square because now Instagram is square. So I thought that she covered all bases with that one picture. And I thought that was brilliant. And then she had 3 different lengths of bios. Let's see, she had, and Julie would probably know more about this, but she had 25 words, 50-word bio, 100, 150, and then a really long bio. But there again, she has published a number of books, so she probably does have a publisher, and they would be promoting her. If and when you decide that you want to begin to put your writings on, then I would say absolutely a blog page, because those of you who are already on WordPress, the blog, whatever you put in last comes up first. And also the way that you're found online is to have fresh content up at least once a month, because it now takes the robots 3 weeks to scan every website in the world. And if your website doesn't have anything new on it for, a few round the worlds, they start saying, there's nothing really happening here. And then they start not getting very interested in you. So you've got to keep the robots excited. And so to do that, if you have a blog and you begin to write, first of all, it builds your website. People can read more about you and read your work as a writer. Anyway, when you're getting started, definitely a home page, about page, and contact.
For someone who doesn't have, obviously if you've got 25 novels out, you'll just put pictures of all your 25 novels, but what are the essential elements of a home page?
Well, a home page, let's see, you're telling people what you do. So the essential element of your homepage would be, if you don't want to put a picture of yourself on there, if you had a book, for example, or a book cover, that would be the first thing you'd want to be putting on there. And it's when somebody lands on your homepage, they need to know within 2 seconds, 3 seconds that they've landed in the right place and what you do. And what the other thing about a homepage, and this gets into how your site gets ranked. You want something on your homepage that takes them off your homepage, because there again, the robots are all about tracking all kinds of things. And they get very excited and interested in you if somebody clicks on more than one page. So therefore, on your homepage, it'd be great if you had a little free offer, or just saying, here, click on my about page.
What does making dynamic content once a month at least look like?
If you keep putting up fresh content, that is what, the web and the robots are all about. They're saying now that the average article that Google will pick up and then begin to highlight and begin to then, rank you up on pages is 1,700 words. So, there was a time that people said, oh, just put up 300 words a month and you'll be fine. I suppose you could put 300 words up, but if you had something significant to say and you wanted to begin ranking on page 1 of Google, you're going to be putting out something substantial.
It's good news for
a
us
thought.
because we might have a bit of trouble turning out less.
People love anything behind the scenes. People are going to, in fact, you know what a great way to write. So if you were in the process of writing a book, and if you just wanted to take people along on your journey with them, that would be amazing. So you'd be talking about yourself and your journey or what happens that day, and that you're writing this book. I mean, that in itself would then begin to build enthusiasm and excitement for your book when it comes out. I was invited to the writers group, these people who've written for years, and there were 3 people who just published a book. And I found it so fascinating. The writers' questions that they were asking, for example, one woman in the chapter that she read, she wrote about how her character happened to pass by a painting. And so another author said, "Tell me a story about that painting. Why did you choose that painting?" And then the author went on to say the story, her own personal story about the painting. And I thought, something like that would be such a wonderful thing to write about in a blog. And these are things that, that the average reader would have glossed over. And it just, to me, it opened up a whole nother world, that it made me so much more intrigued with everything than every word that they put on the page.
So how should I go about setting up my first web page?
You first need to get a domain name. And for an author, definitely try your name, your first and last name. And if it's already taken, which it could be, then have your first and last name and then the word author after it. You could also have your first name, middle initial, so however, but somehow have your name in that. So you would go to GoDaddy's. In fact, they began selling domain names. Now they do everything. But so you need a domain name, and then you need a website host, because there are 2 versions of WordPress. There's WordPress.com and WordPress.org. And it seems counterintuitive, but you would think that WordPress.com is the quote unquote commercial version. On the contrary, WordPress.com came out first. And that's actually, it's almost like Medium, in that WordPress owns everything and you cannot sell anything on there. So what you want a website host. GoDaddy's a website host, Bluehost, HostGator. So you need to get a small contract with a host. Before you purchase your domain name, decide who you want for a host, because what's happening now, that the hosts are giving you a domain name for free for the first year, because otherwise domain names you'd spend about $15 per year per domain name. So oftentimes it makes it so easy to get your domain name and your hosting set up right away. Bluehost, they have a special now, $298 a month, but I think you have to get it for 3 years to get that $298. But you can plan to spend between $5 and $7 a month on average for hosting. And then once you have your host and your domain name, then WordPress itself is free. To get a web hosting plan, you typically have to buy a year of hosting. And that's when they say, oh, we're offering hosting for $2.98 a month. But that's only if you buy a hosting plan all at once and you say you're going to commit to 3 years. So
it's not going to be $3.99 all at once. It's going to be $3.99 times 36.
Yeah. So when you get started, you'll have to choose a hosting plan that's going to be it's going to be a year, at least a minimum of a year. So say $5 times 12. I can't do the math. So $70 for hosting, and $70 for an SSL certificate. So $150 to get started. You're actually renting your domain name. And so if you forget to pay, then all of a sudden it's like, well, where's my site? You didn't re-register your domain name. So then that's about $15 a year for a domain name. But there again, domain names, you can say, I want this domain name for 5 years and whatever.
And my host has an auto renew checkbox, of course, where you can just go, just charge me every year.
Just charge me every year. And then of course they will also try to upsell you on other things, but when you're just getting started, just get the basic hosting, get an SSL certificate and your domain name, and just say no thank you to everything else they try to put in front of you, and you'll be good to go.
These places like Bluehost, they make it very easy for you. You just click the big friendly button that says install WordPress, and it does it for you.
And then WordPress, the other wonderful thing about WordPress is all template based. So, and also WordPress itself, because it comes down with their quote unquote latest theme. So I think it's probably called 2020. And if you don't want that theme, there are other choices. But basically it's a template. And so you would there again set up your home page, which is the first page anyway. You have to have a home page, and then a contact page and an about page. I learned a very valuable tip from someone who actually builds websites. They said, when you're looking for a theme, choose a theme in which the information that you have now fits in there. So don't try to choose a theme and then make your information fit into the theme. Think about it the other way. If you say, well, I only have a picture of myself and I only have this, well, then choose a theme that is so simple that it will accommodate what you have and make it look great.
Is it hard to transfer from one hosting company to another?
Well, there again, even though I've done this a long time, when it comes to the technology of switching from one hosting company to another, I let the hosting company do that. So if I were going to switch from HostGator to Bluehost, for example, I would call Bluehost and I would say, can you please do the switch for me? And they do.
Would they do that for free, or would there be a fee associated with that?
More and more of them are doing it for free. Oh, SiteGround is a very popular one now, SiteGround. And I know because somebody just did that, and I actually had to call SiteGround and say, my customer's ready to switch. Will you do it? And they said yes. They're very competitive now, and so they really want to give great customer service.
Other than fees, what features differ across hosts?
To me, it's all about customer service, because if I have a problem, I need to get somebody on chat or on the phone, and that's the most important thing to me.
What other things might we need for our websites?
Images for your homepage. There's so many great stock photography companies, and the things are free. In fact, on my own site, I have a list of, you could, if you want to download it, but just off the top of my head, PEXELS.com is one great site. And then another one, Unsplash, UNSPLASH. These are all free, and they're great, and they're high resolution, which means you can use them big. And it's great if you can credit the photographer. You don't have to always necessarily, but I always like to credit them. And I do have a piece about that on my website. And then I have Google Analytics tracking code, and that's really more for you. You don't have to have it, but once you have analytics on your site and learn who is interested in you, that's always kind of fun.
If you have if you're writing in different genres and you need different types of writing, do you need a different website for each of them?
I did some research before. I came on and they're saying, put everything under your domain name. You can always, for example, if you want, for example, you come out with a book and you have a title and the title starts getting, very popular, and you think people are going to find you by your title, buy a domain name for the title. And when people type in the title, it's going to point to your main to your main domain name. So you can buy as many domain names as you want. They can all point to one place. So that would be a way. But for the genres, well, what do you think, Julie? You have two different sites.
I do. I have one, because one is the Story a Day site, and one is my own personal website. So, but for speaking about the domain names, I mean, if you type in shortstorymonth.com, you're going to end up at storyaday.org. And if you type in storyaday.may.com, I think you end up at storyaday.org as well, because I bought all those domain names and they're all just pointing at the same site. Nancy, thank you so much. This has been so helpful, having all this information in such an organised way. So to everyone out there, I would encourage you all to check out Nancy's website, fieldsgraphicdesign.com. And I'd love for you, Nancy, to tell us a little bit about what you do there.
Well, I do, because I've been in graphic design for so long, I have brought my graphic design knowledge and experience into WordPress website building. And so I build websites, and then I teach people how to use them. I'm also offering a course that I will be offering it soon. And I also do something I call 10-Minute Monday, which is free. And we meet at 10 o'clock Mountain Time, noon time, Eastern Time. And it's almost every Monday. And then people come with questions, or I'll have a topic of the day, try to show one thing to do on WordPress that could improve your site. It could be anything from search engine optimization to how to find a great image to how to credit a photographer. So there are things like that. And you'll find many of the 10-Minute Mondays on my blog. Thank you so much for having me, Julie. This has been great.
If you want to learn to write, don't read another book or article. Start writing. I'm here to invite you to consider the Story a Day 3-Day Challenge. It's a challenge and a workshop that gets people writing and completing stories in just 3 days. And it works. I'm fanatical about getting more and more diverse stories into the world, and I think yours should be among them. If you're feeling the pull to write or level up your storytelling, let me hold your hand through 3 days of short story writing. Check out the 3-Day Challenge at storyaday.org/3DC. Okay, now before I wrap up this podcast, having encouraged you to go out in this month's theme of engage, having encouraged you to go out and engage with readers, I'm going to pull you back in a little bit and encourage you to engage with your writing and engage with your senses with this week's writing prompt. This week, carrying on the theme of looking at all of the senses, which is something we should all do from time to time, I've given you a prompt at the website at storyaday.org/wow for Write on Wednesday -taste. This prompt is to write a story, and at the key point in your story, your main character is given some momentous news over dinner. So I made it over dinner so that you can concentrate on taste. Think about how taste is one of those things like smell that interacts with your memory so closely. Also, dinner scenes are great because they're a great way of getting all of your characters in one place and showing, people's personalities through the way that they act in a communal setting like that. So I've got lots more tips and tricks about this over at the blog at storyaday.org. I encourage you to go and have a look and then set aside some time to get some writing done and really engage with your senses this week. Thanks for listening. Why not come over to the blog at storyaday.org and check out this week's writing prompts and articles. And in the meantime, have a great creative week and, of course, keep writing.